Thank you. And thank you for accommodating my little situation. I wanted to come today just to share my story and share a story of some other patients that my wife and I help represent. Our story, my wife and I were 30 weeks into a fairly complicated pregnancy when we got very disturbing news about the pregnancy. We found out that there was a development that meant that the baby, if born, would not be able to breathe. And again, this was discovered at 30 weeks when we got this diagnosis. So in that moment, we were obviously crushed. We were heartbroken. It was very much a wanted pregnancy, and it had been very difficult all 30 weeks through that pregnancy. And when we got this news, we did what most people do when they get bad news from a doctor. They sort of ask their doctor, okay, well, what do we do? You know, what do we do now? So, and that's the moment that I want to focus on, because our doctor was not able to then suggest a course of action that they could help us with. They could not treat us. We found out that my wife's health would also be threatened in this situation. She had had a brain surgery the year before, and if she went into spontaneous labor, she could die. So we were in a situation where we wanted to sort of avoid undue suffering on the part of a potential child who might live for moments and then choke for air and die. And also to avoid any risk to my wife's health. And ensure her fertility beyond that. And I'm glad we did that. So, but that's when we found out about New York State's law, that we were past the cutoff at 24 weeks. Our only option was to travel out of state for care. There are 3 providers in the country that will treat patients in situations like ours that late in pregnancy and take patients from out of state. They're in New Mexico, Colorado, and Bethesda. Our doctor had had good outcomes with patients he had sent to Colorado, so we went there. When we were arranging a course of care, we found out that normally the procedure costs around $25,000.
Oh my God.
You have to pay it up front, out of pocket. And that's because insurance companies don't often reimburse people for care. And obviously you're forced out of network in this situation. And we simply didn't have the resources for that. Due to my wife's specific situation, we were able to, like the patient, the provider mentioned, we got the first part of the procedure in Colorado, which is a shot, and then flew back and had the induction at Sinai, which was we flew back that night after terminating the pregnancy, and then my wife went through 36 hours of labor on a labor and delivery ward at Sinai. So that's what we're asking patients to do a lot of times, the ones that can afford to get care. And then you're dealing with, everyone has seen you pregnant. Pregnant's a very public thing. And then all of a sudden you're having to explain your situation to people, explain why you had to leave for a week. Usually the procedure takes about a week when you fly into these places. So just the cost of travel, the cost of the procedure itself, which is, again, usually not reimbursed, obviously ensures that many people would simply not be able to get care and are then forced to carry pregnancies that are either unhealthy to the point where their life is actually threatened, or forced to carry pregnancies that are non-viable, through the point at which the pregnancy is finished. So we, I also just want to share another story. My wife and I got involved, and we found out about the Reproductive Health Act and efforts by people like NIRH to sort of fix this law in New York State. And we've been sharing our story as much as possible. We've talked to plenty of people in Albany about this. And after about a year of doing this, we met another couple from Brooklyn that had to travel. They traveled in December, which meant that we had failed. So I want to read her story, which has been submitted in testimony as well. I was well into the 3rd trimester of a very much wanted, planned, and healthy pregnancy when a routine OB visit turned into our worst nightmare. A scan had revealed that the fetus had not been developing correctly, and I was rushed to a specialist for further examination. After a full and devastating day of meeting with the top medical professionals in their field, our worst fears were confirmed. The fetus, if it made it to delivery, had little chance for survival, and if so, would lead on excruciatingly painful and short life. My health, too, was now at risk. What followed was a painful decision between my doctors, my husband, and I that terminating the pregnancy was the best and necessary decision. After the heartbreaking decision was made, my doctors then told me I would have to get on a plane and travel across the country to receive the medical care that we all agreed I needed. I was shocked to learn there was a 24-week cutoff in New York, even when the health of the mother is at risk or with a non-viable fetus. It is often neglected to be discussed that many problems occur in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, even though it is more uncommon. It was a physically, emotionally, and financially excruciating experience. To have been provided health care I needed in my home state would have made a world of difference. I'm also acutely aware that we were incredibly lucky to be able to have the financial resources and supportive medical team to make sure that I was taken care of. Many women in New York are not this lucky, and that has to change. It's not if this happens to another woman in New York, it's when. And that's the point. This happened, a year and a half after ours, and we met them. These efforts are continuing to fail due to inaction in Albany, and we have to fix this. So I thank you for taking this up today and listening to terrible stories.
I'm going to use Chair's privilege just to thank you. Every individual reacts to a tragedy their own way. You have it within you to share your story with others, but really you're just sharing the story of many other people. You're just able to come forward to let legislators and advocates know. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
You're doing a mitzvah for everyone else. And it's just so frustrating that legislators, there are those who can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But there are so many of us who, while we've had other experiences, have not had that type of hellacious experience. And it's very easy for a legislator to say, oh, something like that is rare or really doesn't happen, so therefore we're just writing the language this way for another reason, but we need people like you to come forward to make it clear that no, it does happen to people, and there is a reason why you would put in the language for not just the life of the mother, but for the health of the mother.
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming forward.